At what point in that process did you finally label yourself a poet? At what point in that, I memorized poetry, to I'm fearful I can't write a poem, to I'm writing poems and I'm a poet? Like, where did that happen for you, and at what point did you feel that you were a poet?
You know, that's here we are. Now we're into the question of moving from creativity to identity.
Right.
And that identity thing is really great, because people ask you, what am I going to do? What are you going to do for a living? Or
right.
What do you do? Or who are you? You know, so that's that core who am I question. Mm-hmm. And I started seriously writing poetry because Alan Wolfe, who is here in Asheville, wrote a great book called The Watch That Ends the Night, about the sinking of the Titanic. Mm-hmm. Alan and I had been in Natick, Massachusetts, and we had heard from a woman named Susan at Uno's Pizza that there was going to be a great poetry reading down at TT and the Bears in Cambridge, and we should go down and hear Ray McNeese and Patricia Smith. And at the time, I thought we were the only performers in the country doing poetry. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have any problem identifying myself as a performer of poetry. We'd been doing that for so long that the identity was really easy. We did it every day, hundreds and hundreds of shows, so it becomes easy. So I went down to TT and the Bears and saw Patricia and Ray McNeese, two great performance poets. Patricia Smith defined the Poetry Slam, and she is now anthologized in college textbooks all over the country. Plus was nominated, her book Blood Dazzler was nominated for the National Book Award last year. And she's a fantastic performer. And so I saw Patricia and wanted to be a poetry slammer. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote my first poem because I didn't write it because I was driven to be a poet. I wrote it because I wanted to be part of the group. I thought, these are great people. I could be part of this crowd. All I have to do is write a poem, just one, maybe two. So I wrote and showed up at the Slam on the first night and decided, well, I'm just not going to bother with it. I'll just improv. So I improv the first poem. And you know, after a few rounds of that, we had some slams here in Asheville. I started to write, and I thought, well, I'm not bad. And I thought, well, I've memorized all these poems, so why not generate a few poems? So I started to do it, and somewhere along the way, I decided, well, I've written enough poems, I could say I'm a poet. And that's when I actually started to claim it. And then now I've just generated so much material that I've almost stopped saying I'm a poet. And I just say, well, I'm just really interested in the way people communicate. Mm-hmm. And I've got a buddy who lives in Paris. His name is John Van Hasselt, and he's Dutch, and he's been living in Paris for 30 years. And I was there I go there about once a year to see Van Hasselt. And we were, having a little coffee at the Bar de Marché and a little beer at the Bar de Marché. And Van Hasselt leaned over and he says, Navé, man, I've got a bone to pick with you. And I said, yeah, man, what is it? He said, well, I tell you what. So this business, he says, you're walking around the neighborhood, you're telling everybody you're a poet. He says, this is ridiculous. He said, why? What is this, man? You tell everybody you're a poet. He says, you're playing all your cards. He said, here in France, you don't tell anybody you're a poet. You just say hello. Let it go at that. He said, it's ridiculous, man. You got to cut this out. It's not good for your reputation. He said, just keep it quiet. It makes you much more powerful. Don't label yourself. It's just that the label business is ridiculous. No labels, just nod. And he was onto something. He wasn't saying don't identify yourself as an artist or don't be, be proud of your work. Don't worry so much about it, and don't hit people over the head with it, and don't go around saying, I'm an artist, I'm a poet. Keep it quiet. And he said, there's much more power in that. So I've moved now into thinking, sure, I am a poet, and I do write poetry, and I do love it, and it's a treasured hobby, and I don't mind identifying myself with it, but I'm much, much more than a poet, just like you are much more than a visual artist.